Yeah, I don't think the Troubles have been accurately or aptly depicted because the standard account would be that this was simply a sectarian conflict between Protestants and Catholics who hated each other. And that's too simple. History is never that simple.
The Troubles, from my point of view, were growing up. My neighborhood was quiet, so we really didn't see anything. But if you went into city center to go to a store or something, you would have to open your pocketbook. They would search it. They would warn your body just to make sure you didn't have any guns or explosives or anything like that. My friend's brother was a police officer, and every day going to work, he would have to check under his car to make sure there was no bombs or anything like that. I was Protestant growing up, but we actually had one Catholic person living in our neighborhood, and one night someone put a bomb on their windowsill. The neighborhood was very quiet. Certain areas had a lot of trouble, which we would really only see on the news.
Ireland more violent. Roman Catholics protest their treatment by the Protestant majority. Barricades were set up in Belfast and Londonderry, and 8 were killed in savage street fighting. 4,200 British troops finally restored order. They disarmed the Protestant police auxiliary and convinced Catholics to take down their barricades. At year's end, an uneasy truce prevailed.
The Troubles is the term we use for a period of intense conflict in Northern Ireland, roughly from the late 1960s to the late 1990s. So a whole generation of conflict, political and religious, that actually involved the death of about 3,000 people in a very small place. You know, the population of Belfast is only about 300,000. The Northern Ireland conflict began as a conflict over civil rights for Catholics, not as a conflict over national reunification, but as a conflict over discrimination in jobs, housing, and education, directly inspired by the civil rights movement in the United States in the 1960s. Singing "We Shall Overcome," all of it.
Violence like this hit Northern Ireland in 1969 after years of simmering bitterness between the Catholic minority and the ruling Protestant regime. But the problems are not entirely sectarian. Here in Belfast, capital city of the province, unemployment is a major factor in the recent upheaval. Even the dockyards, the largest source of employment in the city, have contracted in the face of foreign competition. And outside Belfast, the situation is worse. In some areas, the unemployment rate runs as high as 20% of the working population. Apart from the dockyards, there is little other heavy industry. Within this unhappy structure, Catholics claim they are the principal victims, accusing the Protestant government of depriving them of work, votes, and municipal housing by political and religious discrimination. And while the economic problems are large and long-standing, it is religion above all which divides this land.
And do you achieve it through peaceful, gradual change within Northern Ireland? Or do you achieve it by breaking the connection between Northern Ireland and the UK? And it's always an open question whether Republican nationalism that allows Ireland to break away from Britain will somehow, in and of itself, address questions of social inequality. That was Constance Markovitch's concern. That was the concern of John Hume and the Social and Democratic Labour Party. That's the concern of the socialist wing of the IRA. But the Provisional IRA breaks away from that tradition in favour of almost of hardline physical force republicanism as an end in itself. But is it an end in itself? Because will that lead to greater equality and the reduction of social justice? It won't on its own. You need something more than that. For a start, there were different kinds of Protestants and there were different kinds of Catholics. And at the fringes of both religious groups, there were extremists who engaged in violence, whether it was the IRA in the name of the United Irish Republic, or whether it was their counterparts who were fighting to retain the link with Britain. So among Catholics, there were different groups and different positions. Most people, like most people anywhere, wanted a peaceful life for themselves and their families. Life of the average person, to the extent there is such a thing, is somebody like you and me and everybody else who wants to get on with their lives and live safe and decent lives and keep their families and loved ones protected. That surely is the majority position, for default position for anybody anywhere. On the extreme fringes of both communities, there were people who felt strongly enough about, on the Catholic side, injustice and civil rights, and strongly enough about the ideal of a 32-county United Republic that they would pick up a gun and kill for it.
If your grandchildren end up getting arrested because they've joined the IRA, what would you think about that?
I'd be proud of them. I would really be one proud woman for to say that my son, that my grandsons followed in their uncle's footsteps.
But that's the minority position. On the Protestant side, most people wanted to live safe and happy and decent lives and protect their families. A small minority were prepared to fight against the IRA or even against the British military for what they wanted.
For the most part, I think people just want to be happy and carry on with life. Not growing up, we didn't know my mom was Catholic until my dad passed away, and even then she didn't tell us. We actually, we didn't even know we had a grandmother until my father passed away. So I can only guess, not that my mother ever told us, but I can only guess that they disowned my mom because she married a Protestant man. But after he passed away, we were going to my grandmother's and we'd stopped in a store and there was a t-shirt with the Queen's Jubilee on it and I wanted it. And my mom said, you could get it, but you can't wear it when we go to your grandmother. So that's kind of when I knew my mom was Catholic.
No, you couldn't live a normal life. I was a student, an undergraduate at the University of Edinburgh, and I used to travel back to Dublin through Belfast, and I would walk from one side of the city to the other. There were two different train stations, or where the boat arrived and where the train left from. It was unbelievably tense. I had to walk through armed checkpoints to get from one side to the other. You may ask, why was I doing that? Well, I was doing it out of kind of sociological and political curiosity. I wanted to see it. There were soldiers everywhere. There was suspicion on people's faces. There was a sense that you might be in the wrong part of town. And that's in the cities. And then you could be sitting in a pub, completely, no role in the conflict. And that pub could be blown up.